Now with all the latest from around the world and here at home, it's the ITV News at 10.
Against all odds, the Games have begun. The Tokyo Olympics opened with the flame and the fireworks, but that is where the normality ends. This global sporting celebration in a global pandemic will be a Games like no other. No spectators, fewer athletes and strong opposition from many in Japan. Will it bring the world some respite from COVID with some glorious sporting highs? Also on News at 10 tonight. In date and in the bin, what Amazon does with some unused food and drink. A new special investigation. From lockdown to shutdown, criticism that the government's isolation exemptions are too complicated and too few. And why Team GB's flag carrier has already made Olympic history before he competes in Tokyo.
This is ITV News at 10 with Nina Hossain.
Good evening. The Tokyo Olympics were the Games many said would never happen. Many more said they didn't want to happen. But right now, the day is breaking in Japan and what will be the first full day of competition. The opening ceremony that came before it at times sparkled, delighting the watching crowds outside, barred from entering the stadium itself. There will be no spectators. The Games are a year late and there are still people protesting that they are going ahead at all while COVID cases are rising. So it really is all to play for over the next 2 weeks.
How do you stage a show for such an unusual and, in Japan, unloved beast? The challenge tonight as Tokyo did its very best to wear a welcoming smile. Athletes training, struggling alone. Dancers depicting the frustration of feeling trapped. Traditionally, the Olympic Games aims to unite the world with a shared experience. COVID-19 has, of course, already achieved that for the past dreadful 18 months. Everything played out in front of a near-empty stadium in Tokyo, a reminder, if anyone needed it, of the world we're currently living in. Some traditions are here to stay, far fewer athletes than usual, 23 in Team GB's case, but still a special moment for sailor Hannah Mills and rower Mohamed Sabihi. As the ceremony continued outside the Olympic Stadium, a familiar sight, a small but determined group of protesters representing the many millions who would rather these games didn't go ahead at all. Earlier over Tokyo, not the Red Arrows, but their Japanese equivalent, Blue Impulse, an acrobatic team from the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force, took to the skies. Onlookers captured every moment and seemed to appreciate their efforts. British Olympic bosses know the jeopardy for their athletes is far from over, but say they're doing all they can to keep the virus at bay.
It's going to be tricky, and I don't think anybody should be under any illusion that this is going to be a simple process.
Does it give you sleepless nights knowing that with such a large team, it is likely that you're going to face more challenges going forward, particularly with the athletes?
Yes, I think that's a very fair summary of it all. There are going to be very difficult days ahead. And if we get through from tonight to the end of the Games without any further problems, I would be amazed, because we're just not living in that sort of world.
Jessie Knight, the 400-metre hurdler, was forced into isolation and is training alone after someone on her flight here tested positive.
I felt very much prepared that I may have to isolate at some point or that I could catch COVID. I mean, ultimately, we all took a risk coming here, but it's a risk worth taking.
Her teammate, Dina Asher-Smith, who has just arrived in Tokyo, is determined to live the experience to the full.
This has been a very weird 18 months for all of us, not just athletes, but also the general public. So not only do I want to make sure that everybody goes and puts their best foot forward, and as a team we put together a really good performance, but we also have fun, put on a show and really make sure that we're giving the people back home something to be really proud of.
It wouldn't be Japan without some jaw-dropping technical mastery, a swarm of drones forming a globe, hovering above the stadium. The world together again in Tokyo. Paper doves filled the air as that iconic moment drew closer when the secret of who would light the cauldron is revealed. We were made to wait some time, but the honour was given to world tennis number 2 Naomi Osaka, climbing to the top of Mount Fuji for that most symbolic act of the entire ceremony. Organisers hoping her stardust would add further gloss to their showpiece.
Steve, the Olympics always seems to capture the world's imagination, doesn't it? But can these games deliver those inspirational moments, or at least more of them after that, in such strange circumstances?
I think so, Nina. Of course, everyone here is hoping that's the case, but I think we have to take our tone from the opening ceremony, which left us with a message of hope, but not certainty. I think if you're one of those people who really enjoys seeing world records break and on a daily basis in Olympic Games, then you're going to be disappointed. You just have to think how the athletes struggle to train to even get here in the first place. But those magic moments, yeah, I think they will happen, because the Olympics always throws up those incredible stories, doesn't it? However, there is a caveat, and it is a huge caveat, and that's coronavirus, of course, and that still stalks these games. Now, I think the most vulnerable part of the period is probably through now. The majority of the athletes getting to Tokyo, that was the most difficult part, but it still doesn't mean to say there won't be problems ahead. All it's going to take is for one team to have a major outbreak, and then all of a sudden, really, we're going to start questioning whether these games should be going ahead or not. If that's not enough, local forecasters are saying a typhoon is due to hit Tokyo on Sunday night, sometime on Monday. It's a headache the organisers don't want and probably don't deserve at this stage.
Steve Scott, thank you. And later on in tonight's programme, we'll tell you more about the Team GB flag bearer who made history today in Tokyo. A month ago, we revealed how the online giant Amazon was destroying millions of perfectly good, unsold and returned items every year. Tonight, we have evidence this practice is not confined to just one plant, but prevalent at warehouses across England and Scotland. Our verified survey of 500 Amazon workers uncovers shocking allegations of colossal wastefulness. More than a quarter of them told us destroying products was actually part of their job. Some are even claiming that in-date food and drink is thrown away.
The global anger at our revelations from inside Amazon's Dunfermline warehouse has prompted the government to look at changing the law. Tonight, we reveal what else the world's biggest online retailer sends to be destroyed from here. Long-life food and drink returned by customers or by couriers. Water, fizzy drinks, unopened tins of tomato soup, brown sauce. Usable, yet all deemed liquid waste. Amazon says it's all thrown away because of concerns over food safety. The multi-pack crisps, though, are dated the 21st of August. Indeed, many items are in date, and in some cases, for many months. The current Amazon employee who filmed the videos says thousands of groceries are returned to Dunfermline each month. He wishes to remain anonymous. What percentage of liquid waste and food waste that you deal with is in date and totally sealed?
I would say that about 70% of it at least is all in date and sealed and will be good to go to a food bank. Huge cans of beans, biscuits, large amounts of bottled water. It's incredibly wasteful.
Last month, we uncovered 125,000 unsold electrical and non-electrical items being marked out to be destroyed weekly. The likes of drills, computers and headphones, unnecessary waste on an industrial scale. Since our initial investigation, we've been contacted by current and former Amazon employees from all over the country, alleging similar practices wherever they were. All say that they witnessed large quantities of new and unsold items being marked out for destruction. We spoke to employees from 8 warehouses, a third of Amazon's UK depots. In Bolton, we were told how staff regularly throw away perfectly good items, such as tablets and phones. In Daventry, a current worker says hundreds of toys, clothes and books were destroyed to make space during a renovation. And a former Bedfordshire worker had to destroy pet food repeatedly whenever just one item was missing from a pack. In Darlington, a trainee teaching assistant who had a part-time Amazon role quit, appalled at what she was asked to do.
Working with children, I thought it was disgusting, really. And then seeing what goes in a bin, you know, I could just pick those books up and I could take them to that school.
Where you work now?
Where I'm helping, and it would lighten so many children's little faces.
And separately, in a survey for ITV News, more than a quarter of UK Amazon employees questioned say destroying stock is part of their job. The study was done in partnership with Organise, an employment rights group. In a statement, Amazon say, to suggest we throw away perfectly good food or drink is wrong. If we can donate it, we will donate it. On non-food waste, they state that our priority is to resell, donate or recycle any unsold products. We recognise that confusion may have stemmed from our use of the word destroy. We are in the process of replacing it with terms that more accurately reflect our long-standing business practices. Every year, Amazon donates millions of products to charities across the country. But that's still an insufficient explanation for some.
Amazon could act today. They should not have to have regulation to do the right thing, but it looks like we may need to force doing the right thing on a company that is choosing not to at the moment. And if Amazon have enough money to put their owner into space, they certainly have enough money to sort out this problem.
Jeff Bezos claimed his trip into space on Tuesday made him realise how fragile the Earth is and how we are damaging it. Ironic, perhaps, given the company he founded continues to waste the planet's resources.
Look, you've had plenty of responses to this latest investigation tonight. What's the government been saying?
Well, we've spoken to the Environment Secretary, George Eustice. He's called the behaviour extraordinary. He says he is in talks with Amazon. He says we must find a way to stop it. That was pretty blunt. But when we pressed him on when this tougher legislation might come in, and indeed if it will, he wouldn't give us a cast iron guarantee. And I think that's why a group of 6 charities, including Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, have written to the Prime Minister directly saying we need an anti-waste law immediately, or as they call it, an Amazon law. As for the company itself, well, they admit they've got more work to do towards their stated goal of zero product disposal. But out of all of this, what I'll remember, I think, is one word in Amazon's statement there. They said, we are in the process of replacing the word destroy, the word. So they want to change the vocabulary, but they don't seem to want to change the way they will operate. And that will sit very uncomfortably for many of us.
Semantics. Richard Pallow, thank you very much. Thank you. Train services across England are being cut because of workers having to self-isolate. It is the latest knock-on effect of the so-called pingdemic. The rules for children and those double-jabbed will change next month. They'll change now for some key workers to keep the country running. But their bosses say the government's list of exemptions is impractical, too complicated and too late.
A country getting back to normal? Well, hardly. Train companies warned tonight of cancellations in many parts of Britain. The ports too say so many staff are self-isolating that they may soon not be able to guarantee imports of food and fuel. Even those involved in food distribution say the scheme's not broad enough.
It's a very limited scheme. It's a stitch-up between the government and the supermarkets, acting rapidly, trying to find a solution to a problem that they've created.
Food distribution for supermarkets is the only sector with a blanket exemption from isolation. Instead, workers will be allowed to take daily lateral flow tests. For 15 other sectors, including energy, transport, waste and water, companies must show there's a serious risk of disruption. Only a few key named workers will be eligible to skip self-isolation, and every worker must be approved by the government. Whitehall getting the world of work running smoothly. Is that really feasible? How do you run a train service with just a few key roles protected?
Well, you have to differentiate between potentially having a lack of train drivers, in which case not every train runs on time and some trains are cancelled, and that's a consequence of staff absence.
And you're happy to see that?
You have to. We're saying that we recognise that that's a reality during these next few weeks.
Airport operators say it's all totally impractical. Keeping planes flying is complex, and exempting a handful of workers is a non-starter.
Where we would like the government to get to is to understand that you can't just identify certain roles. All the safety critical roles across airports rely on each other. There's no point having, an air traffic controller if you haven't got people who can fuel the aircraft, or to disembark the aircraft.
But ministers say the battle against the virus is far from over, and they're resisting pressure to bring forward plans to allow all double vaccinated people to escape self-isolation. Libby Vina, News at 10, Westminster.
A High Court judge has told the government it should hold an investigation into the Omagh bombing. The long-awaited judgment comes after a legal challenge against the government's refusal to hold a public inquiry into the outrage in which a terrorist bomb planted by the real IRA killed 29 people. The judge at Belfast High Court said they were what he called plausible arguments that the atrocity could have been prevented.
The aftermath of the biggest single atrocity in the history of the Troubles. The real IRA car bomb in Omagh killed 29 people, among them 6 teenagers, 6 children and a woman pregnant with twins. Today a judge ruled there was a real prospect the attack could have been prevented by the security services. Aidan Gallagher was 21 and one of those victims. His father Michael joined other families in welcoming today's judicial decision, calling for fresh inquiries into alleged cross-border security failings.
For a very long time there's been no doubt in my mind that Omagh was a preventable atrocity. But nobody wanted to hear that message, not the Irish government, not the British government. But now we have an independent person who has said it, and I think that's hugely relieving.
Linda White's father, Fred, and brother Brian were also killed.
I do think we are closer to getting to the truth, getting to answers that we've been asking for years, for 23 years. We have been asking, our lives have been on hold, really, because of what has happened.
Central to the case are claims that intelligence from agents, MI5 and RUC officers could have been drawn together to prevent the bombing. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis, said the families deserve answers and I have great respect for their patience, grace and determination. The UK government will take time to consider the judge's statement and all its recommendations carefully.
I think it's a matter of such importance. It's not only about 1988 and Omagh, it's about how we handle the receipt of intelligence, how we handle anti-terrorist activity for today.
The victims' families hope the inquiries ruled necessary today will finally provide the answers they seek. Neil Connery, News at 10.
Police in Manchester have issued an urgent appeal tonight for an 11-year-old girl who's gone missing from home. Fatima Kadir is from Bolton but was last seen in London. Her parents said tonight they are in a state of shock. Hannah Miller joins us from Greater Manchester Police Headquarters. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, it is unusual for police to do a press conference like this on a Friday evening, a sign of how concerned they are. Fatima left her home in Bolton yesterday evening without telling her parents. She travelled from Bolton and Manchester on the same train as this unknown man and woman. The suggestion from police is that this couple might have been worried about Fatima. They urgently want to speak to them to see whether she said where she was going. She changed trains at Birmingham and arrived at London Euston in the early hours of this morning on her own. At a press conference this evening, her parents were visibly shaken. Police issued this statement on their behalf.
Fatima, we miss you. You're not in any trouble and we want you to come home. We want to at least know you're safe and again you're not in any trouble. Please contact us direct or the police and to the public. If anyone knows where she is or have seen her, please get in touch with the police.
There was a sighting of Fatima at London Bridge Station around 11 o'clock this morning, but police say she has never been to the city before.
Hannah Miller, thank you. Gurkha veterans threatened by the rapid spread of COVID in Nepal are asking the British government for help. Many of them live in remote Himalayan villages and the country has no vaccine stocks of its own. The Foreign Office says it stands shoulder to shoulder with Nepal and has sent ventilators and now vaccines. But more than 70 retired British Army Gurkhas have already died from the virus there.
In the misty mountains of central Nepal, a lone vehicle makes its way along roads churned up by recent monsoon rains. These villages are naturally hard to reach, cut off from the world. But that hasn't spared them from suffering during this pandemic. And it is in these hills that thousands of retired Gurkhas are living in fear of the virus. Durga Badur Gurung fought for the British Army during World War II. He wasn't given a pension from the military, so it is the Gurkha Welfare Trust that looks after him and his family. He worries about getting sick because every day there is news of another funeral. This was a service for one of the latest COVID victims. More than 70 Gurkhas have died after becoming infected. Krishna's father was one of them. Lieutenant Ali served in the forces for 20 years. He had all the strength and bravery for which the Gurkhas are renowned. His family are angry that the British government didn't do more to get vaccines to Nepal and protect its celebrated former soldiers.
जो बुवाले ब्रिटिश आर्मीबाट जति दुःख गरेर पाउनु पर्ने थियो त्यो सुविधा जसरी ब्रिटिश आर्मीमा ब्रिटिशले आफ्नो पब्लिकलाई दिइराखेको थियो त्यो सुविधा हामी नेपालीहरूलाई दिन सकेन.
The Gurkha Welfare Trust has been trying to test as many people as possible. The arrival of the Delta variant caused a huge spike in cases. Often far from specialist help, there is sometimes little that can be done for severe patients. Former Captain Purna Badur Gurung has lost one friend so far and another almost died.
COVID vaccination चाहिँ हामीले अब ब्रिटिश वेलफेयरबाट अब पाइन्छ होला भनेर हामी ठुलो आशा गरेर बसेका थियौं र धेरै जस्तो यहाँ एक्स सर्भिसमेनहरुले त्यो चान्स त्यो मौका पाएको छैन.
He spent 28 years with the Queen's Gurkha Engineers. His father also served in the British forces. Purna feels let down by a country his family were so proud to serve.
वेस्टेज गोर्खा यो चाहिँ धुलोमुलै यिनीहरुले चाहिँ अब के छोड्दियो अब यिनीहरु मरे पनि केही छैन भन्ने जस्तो अलिकति वास्ता नगरेको जस्तो.
The most common words used to describe Gurkhas are courageous and loyal. They never failed to come to Britain's aid and never left a man behind. All they ask now in their hour of need is the same. Debbie Edward, News at 10.
Back here, while this week has been dominated by the lifting of COVID restrictions, there's one group of people thinking less about freedom and more about their uncertain futures. In our series, Class of COVID, we're following 12 young people who've had their lives disrupted during the pandemic. Tonight, we meet 3 of them as they consider the impact on their education and their careers. GCSE student Pfizer and A-level student Tyra are nervously awaiting their exam results, while 24-year-old Brandon has just graduated.
That was traumatizing.
Of all the freedoms we've been promised,
I'm not a very indoor person. I like to go out.
the greatest is freedom from fear.
It was quite frightening because, you never know, oh, am I going to get it? Am I going to survive through it?
Like any 15-year-old, Pfizer's in a hurry to make up for lost time.
The biggest impact was the isolation, I would say. The isolation from the outside world.
And missing memories.
You don't realise how much fun you have, like with your mates and everything, until it's taken away from you. And then you feel like there's no hope left. 5 into -20 is -4.
Today, there is hope, though it's shot through with anxiety over lost lockdown lessons and exam grades to get into mainstream college.
I missed out on all those months of learning, so it just knocked me back a bit, to be honest.
A lot of my friends are self-isolating or they have COVID.
Some still feel safer behind the mask.
I know more people now that have it than they did at the start of the pandemic.
So do you feel free again?
To an extent, yes, and to an extent, no.
For Tyra, there'll be no party for A-levels passed, little to mark the rites of passage to adulthood.
This was supposed to be a moment of celebration. Does it feel like that moment?
No, not really. I think there's an element of, fear that it is still something that is in its peak.
I'm stressing a lot over results day and university.
And there's an unresolved dilemma, whether to move to university if lectures remain online.
Is it worth paying for student accommodation if I'm going to be sat in a small room all day on a computer?
So it's quite possible that you'll spend the next year in the same way as you spent the last year, in your bedroom, squinting at a screen.
Very much so, yeah. If the country's in a position to open up things such as nightclubs, then I think that education is something that should be prioritised.
I lived quite close to my university and it was so empty. It was quite eerie.
Tyra does not want her first year at university to be like Brandon's last.
It was a bit strange, a bit sad, because there was a lot of people that I've just not seen again from that.
Friends are now reunited, of course, but Brandon abandoned his search for work.
Because you were seeing applications and there was literally thousands of people and it was for any job.
I found out that I'm graduating with a first class. This is, I'm so happy with my grade.
Instead, he signed on for a master's degree. Another year of study, another year for the country to recover.
It shouldn't be this generation was worse for it than others. It's kind of something we've all had to deal with. I think it will just show that we are such a resilient society.
I feel like COVID showed me good things can come even if you're struggling. It's not all dark and misery. So yeah.
The pandemic hasn't finished with our class of COVID, but it has made survivors of them all. John Ray, News at 10.
One of England's Euro stars, Jadon Sancho, signed for Manchester United today.
Hello, United fans. The wait is finally over. I am here.
It cost United an eye-watering £73 million to buy the winger from the German club Borussia Dortmund. That makes him the second most expensive English footballer behind new teammate Harry Maguire. Finally tonight, let's go back to where we began, Tokyo. Even in an Olympic year so badly affected by COVID, carrying your country's flag at the opening ceremony is regarded as a huge honour. But when the rower Mosa Bihi walked into the stadium as one of Team GB's flag bearers, he also made history.
Look who's here, it's Big Mosa Bihi.
As he walked out carrying the flag for Team GB, rower Mohammed Spihi, standing tall at 6'8", stepped into the history books as Britain's first Muslim Olympic flag bearer.
To be the first person of Muslim faith is just, it's a huge honour, and hopefully can inspire the younger Islamic nation back home in the UK.
Mohammed Shibi there, 202 metres tall. He's a big man.
He knows his presence in rowing can be a force for wider change, especially as he's reached the top.
To take the bronze, another gold in the men's 4 for GB.
Winning gold in Rio 2016 and bronze in the men's 8 at London 2012.
I'm Mo Spihi, I'm world champion in the Cox's 4 and I'm rowing for Malsey Boat Club.
But even before he dipped his blade into Olympic waters, Spihi's story was an inspirational one. His talent spotted at 15 while a student at a Surrey Comprehensive. The coach who picked him then is hugely proud now.
To think that there we were talking to him one day about, you could be an Olympian, you could be a gold medalist, which he did in Rio, and then now, if we could have said, and you could carry the flag one day, who knew? So absolutely fantastic, so chuffed.
And a fellow rowing club mate says his achievements haven't come at the expense of his Muslim faith.
On the start line for a lot of the races that I've done with him, he'll pray before we start.
rowing with him, you know, it's almost like his faith actually sort of got me ready for it as well.
Mohammed Spihi taking these first historical steps. He hopes others will follow. Sejal Karia, News at 10.
Go Mo. That's where we'll leave you tonight from me and everyone on the Late Team. Good night and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.